All right, welcome to the wonderful world of Bootstrap. So let's check out this Bootstrap thing. What is Bootstrap? What happens if you Google it? So the website is getbootstrap.com. And Bootstrap is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework for developing responsive mobile-first projects on the web. Is it the only framework for developing responsive mobile-first projects on the web? No, absolutely not. There's another one called Foundation. And let's see their tagline. And look at that. They're the most advanced responsive front-end framework in the world. So do you want popular or advanced? So Bootstrap came first, and everyone's like, oh, that's awesome. It's amazing. We don't have to start from scratch every time, right? Because now I'm sure you guys are feeling it that it's kind of annoying to always start from scratch every time. So Bootstrap helps you with that. It provides a foundation. It has a ton of classes, predefined classes that you could use, and it has a grid system that's very simple to implement. And so you don't always have to start from zero every time. And then other people are like, hey, we could do Bootstrap and make it better. And they called it Foundation, but no one I know uses it. So Bootstrap it is. And this is the biggest lie I've ever seen in my life, because they've been saying this since last August. I saw it in August, and I remember I was like, oh, it's gonna be here for Christmas. And no, still there. All right, so don't worry about downloading it for now. We are going to link to it. So the way you link to Bootstrap, let's put in JSpin. Alright. So you can either download Bootstrap and have it linked to your project, which is recommended because when your app loads, it doesn't have to go to their server and then download it every time. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm first going to show you how to link to it, and then you could start using it right away. So if you click on this Getting Started tab, then you'll see download, all this stuff, and then you see here Bootstrap Cdn. So CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, meaning they will deliver Bootstrap to you given a link. So here's a link to Bootstrap. It even says right here, latest compiled and minified CSS. So if we take a look at this, we see link with the relation equals style sheet, href equals this long thing, right? And what does it end in? bootstrap.min.css. And so I just copied that, and let's see what that looks like, right? So maxcdn.bootstrapcdn.com, and then at the end, bootstrap min CSS. All right, here, that's Bootstrap. That's it. That's all it is. Just a ton of code. Looks ugly? I know, because it's minified. Again, computers don't care about white space. As a matter of fact, they'd rather not have any of it. So we minify code to make it run a lot quicker. So let me unminify it by getting rid of the min there. And here we go. So we see body, right? They're targeting the body, setting the margin to 0. Targeting all of these things, setting the display to block. Setting audio stuff to display inline block. So every anchor's background color is transparent. The font weight is bold for every B tag, and so on. So it's really just a ton of predefined things in CSS. They wrote it so you don't have to start from scratch every time. This is like the the new boilerplate, so to speak. Great, so how do we use it? Well, if that's a link to it, I'm just going to take that link, copy it, paste it in, where do CSS files go? The head, boom, pop it in, and check this out. You could actually visually see the difference. So that's in warm. All right, get ready when I add it. You see it? Before, bootstrapping. No bootstrap? Bootstrap. We're like barely getting started. So now we have Bootstrap. It gets rid of that ugly Times New Roman. Either way, you should not use this default text anyway. So, does anyone know who developed Twitter? Bootstrap. Who developed Bootstrap? The people at Twitter. So, the people at Twitter wanted to make it look like Twitter, so everyone's website would look the same, and they'd be like, oh, where'd you get it from? Oh, Twitter. Oh, marketing, brilliant. So there you go. So that's it. We have Bootstrap. What does that mean? What can we do now that we have it? Everything. So let's talk about the grid system. So what do grids have? Grids have rows and grids have columns, right? Like an Excel spreadsheet. So think of that as your web page if you set it up like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a navbar, but make it a grid. Make it in the form of a grid. So here we have our output. Like I said, grids have rows and columns, right? So we need to declare a div with the class of row. And then inside of that, kind of like what I showed the other night, we have to do something like this. We need to say call for column, MD for medium, and then 1 for how many columns it should span. MD is for medium, XS is for extra small, SM is for small, LG is for large, and XL is for extra large. So extra small is like a phone, small is like an iPad, medium is a laptop, large is more like a desktop, and then extra large is basically a TV. Alright, and because I'm working, I think this will render as a small or an extra small. Let's check it out. So grids have rows and columns. Here I created my div with a class of row. Where am I getting this from? Well, from their documentation. They say, hey, all you have to do is give a div the class of row, and we got you. Like, don't worry. Remember that this big thing, it's in there somewhere. Row. There we go. So every row has a margin right of negative that and that. So it's in there. And so now we want to define how many columns. So how many tabs should we have? Maybe 4. So I'm going to add a div with a class of column hyphen medium hyphen 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 1. There we go. And we'll give it home. No. Home. What's our topic for today? Not Mariah Carey, not baseball. The honey badger. Animals. So, home, zoo, animals, and reptiles, those are animals, and contact us. There we go. Awesome stuff. So you can see already that it's stacking when really I declared it to be in a row. Well, that's because this is a small screen, but when I stretch it out, okay, that's not big enough. So I have to add another class to it. So to all of these, I'm going to add call sm-3. No? Wait for it. Extra small. Oh, really an extra small screen. Okay, so let's kind of change that. So let's say on an extra small, we want 2 rows of 2 each. So I'm going to make those all 6. Small. Yeah, we'll leave with that. Let me pull it up in a big page. Here we go. So we're on a medium screen right now. And so they all span 3 columns. So 3, 3, maybe if I had a background color too. Let's give them all IDs. Give this one home. Zoo, animals, and contact. All right. So we do CSS. Come up with colors. You guys know about HTML colors? This is a thing where if you're in web design, you have to know every single HTML color. No, I'm kidding, not every single one. But there's some pretty creative ones. What is up with W3 schools? How could they be down? Yes, they are. What? Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but I want the names. Oh, here we go. The names are the best part about web design. All right, so Indian red, light coral, salmon, dark salmon, light salmon, crimson, fire brick, dark red, light pink, hot pink, deep. Like, see what I'm getting at? So it's not just orange. Like you could pick orange red, coral, tomato, light goldenrod, papaya whip, classic favorite, peach puff, another one, khaki, dark khaki, thistle, oh, plum, orchid, medium orchid, like dark orchid, slate blue, like it just goes on. Pale green, medium sea green. What? I don't think so. No, you could use these anywhere. These are all color safe. So you could use these names anywhere in HTML and they'll work. Yeah. So use these because they're fun. It's a lot more fun than like typing like pound 8FBC8B, right? So when I say give me a color, I don't want to hear green, red anymore. There's this one guy, one student, he printed these out, and anytime I asked for a color, he went down the list with the craziest colors. He like ordered them too, like Navajo white. What? Like who knew there's so much like light or tan colors? So, all right, I'm gonna need 4 colors. Pick your favorites. Rebecca purple is going to be the background. All right. Next up, what color should the zoo be? Orange red. All right, the animals. Medium orchid. And last one, contact. Background of deep pink. All right. You may think I'm wasting time, but that's no joke. Everyone has to know the color names. There we go. We have medium orchid, deep pink, orange red, and Rebecca purple. So, check out what happens when I resize the screen. So, before we do that, on a medium screen, every div or every button is going to be 3 columns wide, right? So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 12. And then even on a small screen, 3, 3, 3, 3 is 12. And then on an extra small screen, 6 and 6. So that's going to be half and half. And then these two are going to go half and half. So medium screen. And then there we have extra small. So they're going half and half. You can even change it if you want. Oh, I zoomed in a lot. So let's say on a small we'll do, oh no, why don't we do, on extra small we'll do 12. And then on a small we'll do 6. There we go. Alright, so here we have medium screen, so 3, 3, 3, and 3. Get to a small screen, and we have 6 and 6. And then we get to extra small, hey, and they stack. Pretty cool, right? So responsive web design. So on a cell phone, it's going to look good, quite frankly. And on a larger screen, it's going to look good as well. Ooh.
How can we know it's all totally square? Did that default?
Yeah, Bootstrap set it. Yeah.
Default.
Yeah. There we go. So Bootstrap includes a responsive mobile-first fluid grid system that appropriately scales up to 12 columns as the device or viewport size increases. No. No. There are ways to get around that, I think. But you're really never going to have more than 12.
But if we have like 5, like negative, what do you do? Like if we have 5, for example.
What do you mean?
The 5.
Oh, if you have 5 buttons?
Yes, 5 buttons.
Okay, then let's add a 5th one. Good idea. About us. Class. So if you have 5 buttons, then you are going to have to figure it out, essentially. So how do you want to do it? Because 5 doesn't go nicely into 12. So what I end up doing is I put like the About Us inside of the contact page. So like I just take out the one I don't really care about. Like kind of the animals, you could put that inside of the zoo page and say like, check out these animals, right? So that's really what I would do. But if you really wanted to display it, then I've never seen that. Yeah. Yeah. Usually it's an even number though. It's like 4 or 6. But I've never seen decimals, but we could try. So let's see what it looks like. So here's the About Us down here. And what is that? Is that 2.5 for all? I don't know, I can't do math right now. 1.5? I feel like it'll just explode. Yeah, definitely not right. It doesn't matter what it's doing, it's just freaking out. Yeah, no decimals.
But if you put only like 2, and 2 by 5 is going to be 10, right? 10
If you only have 2?
No, and if you have 5, and
Uh-huh.
you put the number.
Oh yeah, so let's say, let's do that. Let's put the about. So let's say we have 5. Then what I would do is I would do this. Oops. 2. And then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then that's 1 left over on each end. So what you could do is I'm just going to make an empty one with 1. Oops. All right. So that way it's going to be centered. And here's 1 column that we're not using, and then on the end there's another one that we're not using. Yeah. So that's another thing you could do. Yeah. And then when you resize it, it all just goes crazy. So instead of doing this, Bootstrap actually gives you another class. Bootstrap gives you a different class called offset. And it looks like this. You say call, and then medium hyphen offset by 1. Oh, of course you cut off. There we go. So this is saying, like, push it over by 1. That's it. So it's exactly like doing what I did before, the div, call, medium, 1. So instead of having that placeholder, you could just have the next one offset by 1. So that will work as well. So multiple ways to do the same thing. All right. So good questions. If you want to. If you don't really care, for instance, let's say it has some defaults built into it that will automatically resize it. So here all I did was we have the original 2 for each of them, and then if I resize it, then at some point Bootstrap will say, hey, like maybe this is what you meant, and chances are this will look better on a mobile screen than if you just left all 5 in a row. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Bootstrap does take care of a few things, and this is the example of them being mobile first, meaning that if you don't define a small and extra small, then they're going to say, hey, like, this is probably what you meant. And if you're wondering, like, at what point small or medium is, well, they will tell you. There we go. So extra small is less than 768. Small is greater than 768, but less than 992. And then large is anything greater than or equal to 1,200. Yeah.
I think the mobile, when you buy it, right, it's like they said full HD. So what is equal to extra small?
Because that's a screen size. The definition doesn't have anything to do with it. For instance, it's the resolution. So how wide the screen is, for instance, if I go here, you see up here the iPhone is 375 by 667. So there are 375 pixels of width. and then 667.
Not the outbound resolution.
No.
So we can say similar like a centimeter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in Photoshop, you say from centimeter to pixel.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you check out the iPhone 6 Plus, then that changes. iPad Pro, and that's when we have the full width of them, because it's greater than the defined, where is it, 1200. So, where are you? So, oh, medium, that's what it was. So greater than 992. So because this is greater than 992, then it's now labeled as a medium device. And the iPad, there we go. So the iPad is full width on them because it's not greater than 992. So that's all that it means. And then you could even check it out by changing this to responsive. So here we can change it. So what did we say? 992 is when it should change. So make it smaller, smaller, smaller. What is up with this? And there you go. So right at 992, it'll change. All right. Fun stuff. So what else can you do with the grid? Well, one important thing that you will want to do is you will want to add images. For instance, let's go to Airbnb. Airbnb uses Bootstrap, and here you can see the grid system at work. You see all of these images, and they're each in their own rows and columns. So here you can see one row, including Paris, Lisbon, Tokyo, LA, and Rome. And then inside of this column, you have that broken up into two more rows, and then two columns each. And then when I resize it, then, oh, that's new. Oh, that's very new. I never used to do that before. You just had to scroll through everything. Cool. So they use the Bootstrap Grid layout. So does Lift. So here is a 3-column layout. And then this is all one row. And then here's one row with like a, I don't know, 2 columns, and then this one's 8, and then maybe one on the side, and so on. So when you resize it, you can see that things move accordingly. So what you are going to want to do is add images to your website, right? How about, yeah. Yeah, so you define it. Why don't I'll do another example right now when we add the images. So let's say right below this, I want to add an image of home, zoo, animals, and contact us. Oh, no, don't go there. Oh, no. So Let's look up home zoo animals home. Sure, why not? Zoo. We'll just do 4. We'll take out that extra 1. And so I'll go with that. And then we'll say on a medium screen, these should all be 3. Should we add the other ones in? Sure, why not? Call small, there'll be 6. And then call extra small, there'll be 12. There we go. Come on, Shutterstock. Should have looked for LAZ. Okay, so what I want to do is add images underneath each of them. Why? Why not? So again, grids have rows and columns. Oh, the most important thing is for all of this to be in something called a container. Oops. So a div with the class of container. Put that in there. Let me refresh it. There we go. That's what I want. Why? Because the container will provide full responsiveness. Really, when you're using Bootstrap, you always want to have everything in a container. Why? Because the container makes things, well, responsive. And there are 2 different types of containers. There's container and then container-fluid. The only difference is that the fluid container goes end to end, all the way. So if that's what you want, then use a fluid container. Otherwise, if you want some padding, then use a regular container.
So I think we can do full container and then we have 5 columns. And then we do that split out.
No, because even fluid containers still have only 12 columns.
So we can do 5, right? And split out.
Well, even if you have 5, you still have to account for the extra 2. So, here. Yeah. So, let's see what happens if I add 1 more of these in this example. I'll go to that. So, here, let's say about us. And I'll give it a class of animals, just for the coloring. For the idea of animals for the coloring. So here home spans 3, zoo spans 3, so that's 6. Animals is 3, contact us is 3, so that's 12. And then here we have an extra 3 somewhere. Where's Bootstrap going to put it? Well, it's just going to shove it onto the next line. So you can't go over 12. If you do 2 for all of them, that works, but then you have 2 left over. So that's when you would do the offset, call medium offset 1. And that way it'll at least be centered with 1 column here, 1 column on that side. Yeah. All right, so everything in a container. Why? Because it provides padding and it will make it more responsive. So again, let's add images. Let's do, let's make a row. So .row will automatically make a div with the class of row, or you could do div.row, shortcuts. And let's add some images. So let's add image. And maybe we'll put an ID there just for later. So 2, 3, 4, and let's get our home. Let's get our zoo. Our animals. And our contact page. All right, let's see what it looks like. Absolutely terrible. What on earth is going on with all this? Well, you have to tell images to kind of stay in their columns, right? Because otherwise, by default, it's doing exactly what an image would do, right? It would, like, images are block elements in Bootstrap because it kind of makes more sense for an image to be block than inline. So they changed that. Bootstrap says, hey, all images are block elements now. So how do we fix this? Well, the developers of Bootstrap thought the same thing. They're like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, how do we make it stay in a column? Well, they came up with a certain class. Class equals img-responsive. Where am I getting that from? Well, from the documentation. Down here, they say responsive images. Images in Bootstrap 3 can be made responsive friendly via the addition of the img responsive class. It says max width 100%, height is auto, display block, so it can fit nicely into its parent. All right, now that I added the class of image responsive, refresh. And of course, nothing works. Okay. Responsive. Definitely spelled that right. Oh, they're not in their own columns. They're just a whole bunch of images just hanging out. So you need to put them in their own columns. So what I need to do is I need to do it 4 times. So div class of call medium 3. Almost. So close. And then I'll close the div. So all I'm doing now is putting each image in its own column. So I have a row, I have a column with an image inside of it. Here I have a column with an image inside, and so on. So now, when I refresh it, there we go. They fit nice and neatly inside of their little columns with added padding. Let's check that out. Spec. And let's make sure we're targeting an image. So here you can play around with the settings. And the column itself has some padding. Okay, so if you wanted to change that, well, really the only way you would know to change the padding of the column is by looking at the inspector, which is this down here, right? Because originally I thought the image had some padding, but no, it's the column that has padding. So, oh, notice that zoo right here doesn't start all the way to the left. It's padded a little bit. So same thing with the image. The beginning of the Z and the image line up. So if you want the images to be full width, well, then you have to change this. So in the CSS, you want to find where they define the padding. Padding right, padding left. Hey, so that looks cool. So they defined it in, oh, in all of this. Okay. So you can do something called, maybe it's not class extending. Well, or if I refresh it, it'll go back to nothing, which is what we don't want. So what we can do is we can create our own class with no padding. So check this out. For all of these, I'm going to add a class of no padding and paste that in all of them. And so what the CSS no padding class is going to do is no padding, and that's going to have a padding left of 0 and a padding right of 0. Now when you refresh it, they touch. The inspector is going to be your best friend. It's going to help you so much. So use it. Because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to figure it out so easily. So there you go. Can you make all these images the same height? Absolutely, but they would stretch out the images. So what I would do is I would crop them in some photo editor to make them all the same height. And that way they'll look good no matter what. Questions? Never used Tumblr. What do you do on Tumblr? What do I search for? So when you click anywhere, like this, it like just pops up like something like something like this. Yeah, that you get that for free. You could get a small one, you get a large one for free. Like they do that for you. You don't have to program this at all. You don't have to program like the background going, this little X button, or the fact that you could click anywhere and it'll go away. They give you that for free. It's amazing. What else do they give you? Well, they give you a carousel. So you throw a bunch of images in there. You could also click on these little buttons. Free. When you hover over something, you get a little tooltip. Pop over is for a more exaggerated tooltip or a tooltip for more data, more information. So left, right, top, bottom. If you want some drop downs, you could do that. scroll spy. So when you scroll, it'll like tell you. This is really obnoxious the way that works. Yeah. So Bootstrap. We're not there yet. We'll get there. Anything else? Good questions, though. I like how you guys are thinking about uses. All right. So everyone kind of clear about the Bootstrap Grid? So now when you resize it, boom, you get that. So you get all these things up here, and then the images down below. No, not really. Well, okay. Why don't I show you everything that Bootstrap has to offer? So not only does it give you those like pop-up things and tooltips, but they also give you drop downs. I don't know why that one's stuck there. Drop ups, which I've never seen. Like if you've ever wanted to use a drop up, I've never been like, oh, I need a drop up here. You can also have button groups. So if you wanted buttons to be kind of together, you could add as many as you want. So if you added like 2 more, then it would create 5 and it would look good. And then you could create like groups of them, different sizes, using these custom classes like button group LG for large, SM for small, XS for extra small. All right, there's like this theme going on. You could combine it with a drop down, make it vertical. Justified's pretty cool. And then these, you're going to want to get familiar with these words: primary, success, info, warning, and danger, because these you could put anywhere, really. Like giving a button the class of BTN success will give it this green background, or button info will give it this. You could also change text to have like success, info, warning, danger colors. Of course, you could change the sizing of the buttons, different things. So you could have a drop up and you click on that. The input groups are really fun. So this is just an input. This isn't a button or anything, but it still gets the job done. And then, of course, sizing again. If you wanted to add a checkbox and then do something like Y, I don't know, or a radio button, I don't know. You can't unclick it because there's no other radio button. These you use pretty often, right? Because you type text, you click go, and it does something fun. You can click multiple things, and just a whole bunch of variations. So if you want to make the text bold, you can have the user click that and it'll type bold. Of course, it's not activated here. You have to do that all yourself. If you want like some help thing, action. Navs are fun, but they don't work unless you have the JavaScript enabled. So those are fun. Pills, I think the same thing. Should be in JavaScript. And you can make things disabled, so you can't click on that, but you can click there. All by adding a class disabled. So Bootstrap really is just a ton of pre-written CSS things. Like they have a class of dropdown, and if you use it, it'll work like a dropdown because you imported Bootstrap. So more variations. The Navbar is really fun. So this is the entire code for the Navbar. If you take a look at it, all it is the nav tag with the class of Navbar, Navbar default. Inside of it is a container fluid. So you can have multiple containers on a page, but you should never, ever have a container within a container. So you can have multiple containers, but you should never have a container with a container. because the container is what provides responsiveness. And so if you put like a container within a container, then they just don't know what to do. There's just too much responsiveness going on, and it just freaks out, and it doesn't work as planned. So forms are cool. They give you certain classes like form control, which will make the input have some padding, make it rounded, and then make it full width. Some buttons, which are great. So here, if you want your navbar fixed to the top of the page, then you just add this class, and that's it. So we learned about that yesterday. Oops. Fix the top. You could fix it to the bottom. Inverted navbar just by adding navbar inverts. So what am I talking about? Why don't we do this? Why don't we make a navbar real quick? So let me take all that out. Grab all that. Alright, so let's throw in the default Bootstrap navbar. Navbar, you can either copy all the text, or you can click this fun little, every time the wrong button. This button. So you click copy, copy. Hey, that's a tooltip. We're using their own stuff. So we'll paste it in. Yeah, we got a navbar. Just like that. So if you resize it, boom, hey, it automatically transforms into this type of navbar with a, go away, I think after like a second. Go. So it'll give you this hamburger menu up there. I don't know why they call it a hamburger menu, but if you click on it, then hey, nothing happens. So in reality, what should happen? All those things that disappeared, like these links, this drop down, hey, the drop down's not working either. What could possibly be the problem? Well, we only imported the Bootstrap CSS, whereas animations and stuff is really JavaScript. Even though I just showed you transitions, just imagine I didn't show you that. But in order for drop-downs to work and for things to like slide up and down and stuff, you need to have the Bootstrap JavaScript added as well. So check this out. I'm going to go back to the Getting Started page. And remember where I linked the latest compiled and minified CSS. This optional theme just provides some like gradients on buttons and makes stuff like a little bit like, I don't know, slightly different colors. But this is the latest compiled and minified JavaScript. Awesome. So I'm going to take that. And does anyone know where JavaScript files go? You guys are awesome. So they could go in the header, they could go in the bottom of the body. It depends. So things get read in HTML from top to bottom, left to right, right? So the first thing you want is your CSS to load, because that's all the styling, like what makes stuff pretty, like gets a font like all set up, right? Because sometimes, have you seen like a page where it's the default Times New Roman, and then all of a sudden, boom, it like pops with color and everything? You guys know what I'm talking about? Like then all of a sudden the font is like the right size and everything. That was back when like the internet was slower. But if you load the CSS after you load the main content, then that's what'll happen. It'll display everything in Times New Roman, and then everything will display with color and the font families and stuff. So the order you want is the CSS, and then you want the content, and then you want the JavaScript. Now, if you put the JavaScript in the head, and your JavaScript takes a long time to load, then the user is sitting there staring at a blank screen, because the JavaScript has to load until before anything can be displayed. That's why you want the JavaScript at the bottom. Now, I said you could put the JavaScript at the head when you do something that tells the JavaScript to wait until everything else is loaded. I know that's really confusing, but in JavaScript, there's a way to say, hold up, don't run this JavaScript until everything has been loaded, and then it'll run. So for now, just put it at the bottom of the body. It's completely fine. All right, let's check it out. And don't worry if you didn't get any of that. We'll go into that a lot. So I refresh it. Hey, it still doesn't work. What gives? Christoph said it was going to work. But hey, this console, by hitting Command-Option-J, it'll bring up the JavaScript console, which will give you any errors. For instance, you go to any website, like let's go to the Weather Channel. Let's see what errors they have. So here is the Weather Channel, and if I open up the console, and sure enough, we're going to get a whole bunch of errors. Why? Because no one's perfect, no website is great. And here you have failed to load resource, error blocked by client, like parser blocking, failed to load, like all these, like unable to find email endpoint. So all these errors that are just for the programmer to be like, hey, we're getting all these errors, yet it looks like everything's fine, right? Everything's perfect. Like you would never know that all the, like behind the scenes, everything's going nuts. So here's our JavaScript console, and really you want it to look like that. Absolutely nothing, no error message. It will tell you what is wrong. So it says, uncaught error, Bootstrap's JavaScript requires Jquery. What? Jquery? So it's true, Jquery is a JavaScript library. So what Bootstrap is to CSS, Jquery is to JavaScript. So Bootstrap is just a whole bunch of pre-written CSS code that we're going to use. For instance, row, container, this call MD3, like all of that. Bootstrap said, hey, like I created this class, use it. So the same thing with Jquery. Some people said, hey, let's create a JavaScript library so you don't have to always code the same thing over and over again. So how do we get it? Well, we could download it. Well, that's not what I want to do. I want to get the CDN of it. So I'm going to go to Jquery Cdn. Who remembers what a CDN is? Content Delivery Network, meaning they host it, so you can just link to it. So if your site needs Bootstrap, you can just say, hey, get it from them, like they're hosting it wherever they are. So let's see if this works. Oh, it does. So typed in Jquery Cdn, latest stable versions, awesome. So let's grab, we could get the uncompressed, the minified, slim minified. I honestly don't know what slim is, what the difference is. I'll have to look that up. But the minified is a good bet. So here we go. We see another link, but this time it's JavaScript code. So this, in reality, is Jquery. We see jQuery version 3.1.1.min.js for JavaScript. So I'm just going to copy that. And the integrity and cross-origin, that just makes it so that when your app goes to get jQuery, it speeds it up a bit because it says, hey, like this integrity thing has been verified. So it's just for security purposes. If you didn't have it, it'll still work, but it has to do a whole bunch of checking, like what website's it coming from, like are they trusted, all this stuff. All right, final thing, boom. Give me my drop down. Hey, and now it works. Check out the Hamburger Menu. Okay, whoop. Free. Didn't have to program a thing of that. Can we change these? Absolutely. You can change it to whatever you want, right? Like I showed you before, like instead of search, we could change it to like search for animal, whatever it is. Here, placeholder search for animal. And then refresh it. Hey, check it out, search for animal. Cool. All right, now, honestly, the most annoying part about Bootstrap is like importing it, like getting it, but it's really just a 3-step process. You need the Bootstrap CSS, you need the Bootstrap JavaScript, and then you need jQuery. jQuery just handles the drop-down stuff and the Hamburger Menu sliding down, and the order does matter. Oops. There we go. So, if Bootstrap JavaScript needs jQuery to work, right? We got that error message. You have to import jQuery before. So, if your things aren't working, if your dropdowns aren't working, chances are you imported jQuery after. For instance, check this out. Let me import it after. Refresh it. Hit dropdown. Nothing happens, right? And see if we get an error. Yeah, Bootstrap JavaScript requires jQuery. And hey, we have it, but it's not imported before. Very important. Okay. Cool. So, reading along in the code here, or in the documentation, we had the inverted navbar. So, really, Bootstrap is a lot of pattern matching. So, here we see like inverted navbar, modify the look of a navbar by adding navbar inverse. Okay, so I want that class. Where do I put it? Okay, nav class navbar, navbar hyphen inverse. Okay, so take a mental snapshot of this line. So nav class navbar. So let's go here, see if we could find that. Like nav class, no, that's a form, don't want that. No, navbar. Nav class, navbar, navbar default. Okay, so if I change this to navbar inverse, right? Class, navbar, navbar inverse. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Refresh it. Hey, we got an inverted navbar. Pretty cool stuff. So also with, let's say we want to fix it to the bottom. So here, add navbar fixed bottom, and include a container or container fluid to center this stuff. Okay, so navbar, navbar default, which for us it's navbar inverse, so just add navbar fixed bottom. So I'll do that. Let's see, oops. There we go, refresh it. Hey, we got it. Hey, drop, that's a drop up. It all makes sense, even though it says drop down. And then it said and include a container or container fluid. So right after it, div class container, and of course it already had it, so we're fine. Questions?
So with this thing, if we offline, the website cannot work, right? If we put like in a DOM and then we put link and we can load it in the offline.
Yeah, that's when it would be better to download you should download Bootstrap and Jquery anyway. I just wanted to make things a little bit simpler for now. But yeah, in reality, you should download it. And I'll show you that. I'll make a project in Atom with everything. All right, so we have the Navbar. Let's check out Breadcrumbs. So here we see like home, library data. Like, I don't know if you guys know it, but GitHub is the most bootstrapped out site I've ever seen in my life. Like, everything is Bootstrap. Like, these, like, slashes, that's the breadcrumbs. Like, these buttons, this is just the class of success. Or yeah. So, for instance, let's say I wanted to add a button right here for whatever reason. How can I do that? Well, it really doesn't matter where I put my navbar. I could like bury it because it's always going to be position bottom. So let's say I add a button, the div with the class of btn. Click me. Like, where am I getting this class of btn? Bootstrap. So refresh it. Okay, so we get click me. All right, but where's all the color? Well, that's where that, remember I told you memorize like success, info, warning, danger. So btn hyphen success. Hey, it's a green button. Change it to info. It's going to be a nice light blue button, right? And then if you want to customize that, of course you can. We'll do that later. And then like warning and danger. And then default. So we have all those. They have a bit of margin to them, so you don't have to program that in. All right, they do a lot of things for you. They hold your hand a lot. And then that green button, watch what happens when I add a theme to it. So that, remember I showed you they have this optional theme. So I'm going to add that, which just gives a few like styling things. So you see how plain and kind of boring, like they're solid colors. I'm just going to add, is it before or after? It doesn't matter. After. Everything matters. All right. Add it. All right. Refresh. Hey, and it added like a little bit of shading, like it's darker below. Were you guys able to catch that? Like little things like that. So now they're not just solid colors anymore. So that's the optional theme if you want it. Are there other themes? Oh yeah. We'll go through the rest of Bootstrap first. So we have Pagination. So say you want to jump to like page 5, you can just click on that. It'll take you to page 5, but you have to program it yourself. And then, of course, you could disable it, right? So here I can't click on 1, but I can click on 2. Of course, the sizing, so SM, LG, and so on. So, what else? A pager. Not bad, just by adding an unordered list with the class of pager. That's kind of cool. So left and right, more or less. Ooh, actually, that would have been good in the in one of my projects. The Star Wars one. Here we have different labels, again with the default primary, success, info, warning, danger. And then we have badges, so messages for, you see that all over the place. So all you have to do is add a span with a class of badge and then whatever you want in there. So if I go into my code and we'll give like the orange one, which is warning, we'll give that, what was it? Oh yeah. Warning. Whoop. Span class badge of 99. And then I have like 99 there. Right? Super easy to do. It's really just pattern matching. Here's a Jumbotron, which is really common in a lot of websites, usually with a background image. So let's take that and let's add a big old Jumbotron even before all of these. So there's our Jumbotron. I don't know if you can see the background, very faint. Or, oops, yeah, I forgot to put everything in a container. So see how these are all the way to the left? If you put them in a container, go. Like that. There we go. So the reason why I'm not putting the navbar in a container, or in this container, is because the navbar already has its own container. Remember, right here, div class container fluid. So even if it's a fluid container, it's still a container. So when I refresh it, you got that spacing there, so everything's kind of centered and not to the edges. Alright, let's put the Jumbotron in the container as well. So right now it's butt up against the side, and refresh it. Whoop, there you go. So it has a bit of padding there. Now let's add a background image. Why not? So in this case, what would I target to give my Jumbotron a background image? H1. Do I just want to give the H1 a background image, or do I want to give the whole thing a background image? The whole thing. So what is the whole thing inside of? This div with a class of Jumbotron. So let me target the Jumbotron. Jumbotron. Spell that right? Jumbotron. And we'll give it a background color of light salmon. Awesome. So light salmon. Those are light salmon. So cool. I targeted the Jumbotron, and now it has the color of light salmon. You got to be quick. So what I'm doing here is not what you want to do, because now every single Jumbotron is now going to have a background color of light salmon. What you want to do is something called class extending. Oops. There we go. So I want to say something like Jumbotron hyphen custom. There we go. Hyphen custom. And there you go. So that way, if like Joe Schmo wants to create another Jumbotron, then it won't have that light salmon color. There we go. So that one doesn't, but this one does. So you want a class extend. You could either call it like Jumbotron custom, which is a good like starter class, or you could call it like Jumbotron-salmon, or you could call it what it is. So here, that. Instead of Jumbotron custom, maybe call it like heading. That makes sense. Medium? No. All right, so how do we add a background image? Well, let's pick a animal. Two animals. I'm guessing lion, bear. Next time. Actually, that's it. Just me. All right. So let's change the background to that URL, and let's see what we get. Hey, why the no teeth? So by default, the background will repeat for as much as possible. So what you'd want to do maybe is something like background repeat, no repeat, which is very obnoxious to type out, but goodbye. So now that, but it's not all the way to the end. So that's background size cover. Hey. And of course it's not going to fit because that's how tall the Jumbotron is. So we just got this creepy guy looking at us, which is fine. So, hey, what if you want it to be full width? What do you do? Well, check out the documentation. To make a Jumbotron full width without rounded corners, place it outside all containers and instead add a container within. Okay, inside of the Jumbotron, give it a container. So I'm going to take this, keep that on the buttons, and then close that container. There we go. So now, check out the gutters. Gone. So menacing, those eyes. And then you can keep customizing it, like change the color to Navajo white, so it's not so dark in his hair. There you go. Hello world, right? So that's how you start customizing it. Again, never change the default classes that Bootstrap gives you unless your manager tells you to. But chances are you don't want to do that because let's say we're all working on a project and I'm expecting the Jumbotron to have like that default like grayish color or whatever it is. And then I add a Jumbotron and all of a sudden it's like pink. I'm going to be like, oh, who did it? So you don't want to overwrite the default classes in Bootstrap. All right. Yes. Yeah.